I want to share something specific about AI. In Kenya, in Africa, in fact, the title is Problem-Driven and Data-Centric AI for Africa. The last time I checked, Kenya is still in Africa, right? So I'm trying to give an overview of what makes us different as a continent. And in this current dynamics, where should we focus actually when we try to employ AI across sectors? These are two main arguments for me as we try to build a strategy, adopt AI across different sectors. It needs to be problem-driven and data-centric for it to make an impact in Africa. And what do you mean by that? I will explain later, but some of you may not know me. I see so many familiar faces, but a quick introduction. As my weird name implies, I'm originally from Ethiopia, but I spent almost a decade in Europe doing master's, PhD, postdoc, and so on. I came back to Kenya 6 years ago, first for IBM research, now at Microsoft. Over the years, I had the experience to collaborate with researchers and collaborators worldwide, including in Asia, China, and Vietnam. So I have been working on AI since 2012 summer in Portugal. But some of the things I'm going to share is the perception I developed over the years, interacting with so many collaborators, working across different organizations, both in academia, like you, and also in tech industry lately. And my perceptions are coming from that direction. So, of course, I lead the Microsoft AI for Good Lab, but what I'm trying to share is really something I also believe as an African and someone who has been in the space for so long. I'll be the first one to admit that AI is a technology that has both capabilities, a tool and as weapon, as our President Brad Smith mentioned. But mostly, I saw Trevor Noah speaking in an event recently, and he said exactly how AI in the developing world is different from the global north. And he specifically said, AI in developing world, whether it's Africa, India, is often focused on solving a local problem, right? Rarely we work on driverless car because the technology is the same, but we have so many problems we really need to address. And sometimes I find myself in a conversation where the AI is going to, kick all of us out in 100 years and so on. But my focus is often, let's focus on the current problem we are facing, right? We have so many of them that require solution technology, not today, decades ago, years ago. So when you think about this problem, this is not academia problem, this is like everyone's problem we face in the global south and in Africa. And when I think about the technology, which is AI, everyone should think, how can we not solve, because they are very difficult problem to solve, but at least try to mitigate some of the adverse impacts of these problems, or potentially how can we adapt, our way of living toward this technology. If you zoom into Africa, I think probably as much as I do, we have several problems across key sectors. We talk about AI, ethics, data center, so many questions. But when we think about connectivity, just internet as an example, we are still lagging behind to connect our population. Healthcare, which is a very complex problem, but when you consider the burden and the healthcare workforce, there is a big inequality there. Food security, I always say, this is very most important thing. Millions went to bed every day with severe food insecurity. And I urge all of us to think as individual, as an institution, how can we use AI, because this is a conversation point today, to solve those problems. And through these problems, we could address data collection, ethics, data sharing, if all of us conditioned our conversation on the actual problem we are trying to solve, not something asymptotic that's going to be in 10 years, 5 years' time, those problems we are facing at the moment. And if we condition the conversation, I'm sure it is easier to communicate on the data sharing, model development, ethics, responsibility of it, positive impact, negative impact, if we are laser focused on really trying to solve our local problems. And here we are at Strathmore, and I found this article actually quite fascinating, and it really overlaps with what I'm trying to say here. In this report from your institution, it says Africa should focus on its unique challenges and solutions in AI and innovation field. So it's not just my own personal opinion. Of course, you also share a similar perspective from your report published a couple of years ago. I hope by now we focus on at least the highlight of some of the problems we face in the continent and how we should strategize our resource and effort toward this AI. And that is something we do a lot at Microsoft AI for Good Lab. So I was chatting with some of you. Microsoft in Kenya has 2 research labs. One is from Mari, now it's called Microsoft Research Africa, and another one is AI for Good Lab, which I lead. So we are the same people, the same research mindset, but we tend to focus at AI for Good Lab on applied type of research. We try to collaborate with organizations, institutions that knows the problem better, and we come as a support staff so that we can generate insight that helps decision making better for those organizations. For the time's sake, I will not go through all the projects in details, but I'm just trying to show it to you. We are practicing what I'm trying to preach. Focus on the problems that are local in context. Food security is a key issue, and we work this project in collaboration with the Nature Conservancy because they was worried that irrigation is expanding a lot in central Kenya, which could be a good answer for food security, but as you know, unmonitored irrigation could also consume the groundwater and may affect the downstream population. So they want to understand how irrigation is expanding over the years and understand the water consumption. Of course, Masai Mara, which is our favorite spot in Kenya, but the Kenya Wildlife Trust came to us and we said we have this solution because the wildlife and the population around, they start to having this conflict. And you know as much as I do, you cannot really, when you say, I will compensate you for the cattle attacked, people will always send those old cattle there. So they were like, what would be the best way? We build what we call risk profile for the whole area so that the Wildlife Trust could understand which populations they need to relocate or build a fence whatsoever so that they could reduce that human predator conflict. Agriculture is very key. We have been working with Kenya Space Agency, specifically in Murang'a County, in developing land use land cover map, which is going to be grow in scale more. Even if we sit in Nairobi, Kenya, I oversee the effort in Africa. We have similar project in Namibia using old aerial photos to understand climate impact. One of my favorite projects is population mapping. So often we say technology AI should benefit people, the population. And then you come back to Africa and maybe go to Congo. If you ask when was the last time the government had made a census, it could be like 20, 25, 30 years. So in one side we said African population is growing. On the other side, we don't have data to locate where they are, specifically if they are marginalized. Then there is a big gap in mapping our population. If you don't know where the population are, then how could you design an intervention strategy on agriculture, healthcare, road, education, because you don't have that clear data in the first place. So this has been a multi-year project we have been working on, and it will be released soon. That will have a better, accurate mapping of populations in recent years in the global south. I will not go each by each for those projects, but what I'm trying to say here is, again, important to be specific on the local problem we try to address. Second, I've been working on AI, as I said, for 15 years, but I don't know about population. I don't know about malnutrition. I don't know about fertilizer. Every project you see, what does it have? A partner we work with. And this is really a key message. In a conversation I go, everyone is like flowing on their lane without cross collaboration, in problem understanding, in data sharing, and impact analysis. But if you really drive impactful solution using AI, make sure you are involving the right stakeholders for that problem. Why is that key? I know this is academia, so I could honestly point out, sometimes when we do research, especially in academia, we tend to understand the problem less and we focus on the more fancy part of the deep learning model we put, the accuracy we achieved, and the nice graph we generate. But I always say, really understand the problem first. And as John Wilder said, an appropriate answer to the right problem is worth a good deal more than an exact answer to an approximate problem. That's mostly the challenges of your PhD students. They tend to work on this specific problem, but if you ask, did you talk to the farmer? Did you talk to the extension worker? Did you engage patients in understanding of your healthcare project? Usually that is very limited. Why I said that? Sometimes when we have data, we just run away with the data and build AI model. But if we don't understand the problem, the data could mislead us. Whichever data source you use, I always say it is a snapshot of the problem. Just because you have one data set doesn't mean that you have all the perspectives of the problem you want to address. The quality, the size, the local context, the distribution shift should all be considered. And you only understand that when you try to engage the stakeholders. If you consider food security, it has so many complex dimensions. Each of them are complex problems. So that's just trying to say, really understand the problem better before you even think about AI or adopting AI. What happens? If the problem understanding is limited, we may cause risk or waste of resources. And it has been documented over the years, ill-designed AI pipeline could create so many problems. One of my favorite examples is this work. When COVID kicks in, so many research from academia and many other organizations built AI pipelines trying to detect COVID. And some group of people did a study of more than 300 papers and research done on COVID. And they said none of them were clinically fit. So that means, as academia, you could build data, you could generate paper, you could build a model, but what is the point if it's not useful at last mile? So we need to take that into consideration. And again, this is why we need to put more effort in understanding the problem. How, at least in my organization and in my team, how I try to understand the problem better, we often involve the key stakeholders across all the process of the project. And this is, I'm sure, I had a meeting with the government, Ministry of Agriculture and others lately, and they said, they did research, they do some technology, and they came for adoption. But it's very critical to involve them right at the beginning when you design, when you develop, when you validate, and so on. And that kind of engagement could also be, different levels. Sometimes you may meet the high level, sometimes you could have scientific conference, sometimes you would be in a dark room in our partners and code together. So that engagement is also key so that you achieve that balanced relationship accordingly. Another work we did recently and published in Nature was how intersectionality is key. Sometimes when you think about AI for agriculture, we think it's just AI for agriculture, but it touches a lot of dimensions, how you are affecting the south, the north, the arid areas, semi-arid areas. And that also highlights why it's very, very important always to do intersectional analysis in our research. And this will be actually a requirement if you are writing a grant, if you are looking for resources. Many will ask you, how do you engage intersectionality across your pipeline? Another point I often like to make is local context matter. We say crop type mapping, it's very different in the US, large, cleanly polished, delineated fields versus Kenya versus Rwanda. And hence, it is very important to consider the local context. As the famous Professor Wangari Maathai said, you may think you are doing the right thing, but in the local context, you are completely off track. And this is the challenge not for us, but many coming from outside trying to solve local problem using technology, AI. But if we don't include that local context, we often run into a problem. Another part of my title, if you remember, is one was problem-driven, another one, data-centric. And what I mean by that is there's a tendency nowadays to build the large data center, to build the large, big data for our AI pipeline. And often that could be the case, but still there are many problems we may address without having a big chunk of, terabyte of data. And hence, always focus on the data you are trying to use to solve that problem, right? Again, I said focus problem, you understand the end user, engage the stakeholder. Sometimes you may solve that problem just using the right data, the right quality, the size. And hence, why I said earlier, when we do even data collection, let's not do blind data collection. It should be more informed. You need to be aware what size, what quality, what coverage you need to have first before you go out data collection. Because in data, you have so many problems you need to explore first. But I see many students say, we have this data set from this report. You download and you just run AI pipeline on it without spending enough time in understanding the data. So I worked on this topic a bit more when I was at IBM Research, and one work we did is actually understanding academic books for dermatology. So you have a dermatologist trained in university like Strathmore, but what kind of information are they trained on? We found out many academic books doesn't show examples from dark-skinned patients. That means you are trained at the end of the day, you may not have enough understanding of how a particular skin condition manifests itself on darker population versus Caucasian. And that brings low quality of care. And this work actually led to Stanford University. We did it in collaboration with them, finally, to open what they call the first skin of color program, because AI now helps to analyze the academic books, show the problem. It didn't solve the problem, but it shows the problem for others to make a decision. So how do we put AI is also, be mindful in that regard. I will not go too much in detail, but always if you are working on AI, be mindful of the data you have. There is so many challenges you need to be aware in the data space. It is very common in healthcare, but also in agriculture. There are so many global data projects. This is motivated by our project in Muranga. Some of them are released by Global Dynamic Orbit, European Space Agency, ISRI. And this is just for the same Matoya town area. And you could see the land cover map, even among themselves, are very different and wrong. And imagine if you are an agriculture ministry and you make decisions on the data which is actually wrong. And hence, we proved it with just a small ping of local context data, you could have better quality land cover map. Again, the story is two. Always, if you are working on AI, make sure you understand the problem. How you do that? involve the stakeholder and spend enough time to make sure you understand the data you are feeding into the AI pipeline. So these are some of the engagements we do. As I said, even if we are an AI applied research team, I spend more time meeting with the government, non-profits, and others. The way we do the research is, as I said, very problem-driven. It often gets even international recognitions, as you see on those examples. And even now, we are contacted by ACM, Nature. That's the way of responsible type of AI development in Africa should be also shared across the global community. So we started, that effort, not only always importing, but we practice, we preach, we show it, we could do it, then that's also being adopted globally. Again, what I want to end up is these three recommendations for academia. As I said, I have been academia for a few years at universities. Still, I engage with professors, students, and I often hire interns, especially PhD students in my team. Academia has actually a role in these three key recommendations. One, filling the gap. As I said, I do applied research. That means I work with governments and nonprofits. And every time I talk to them, they feel like we don't have the resource, we don't have the manpower. But of course, I cannot work with the Ministry of Agriculture forever. We need someone, your students, to train, to be a part of those projects and those engagements so that you could come and fill the gap. Two, cross-institutions collaborations. Maybe this is a bit cliche, given I don't know much the academic structure in Kenya, but always we should really collaborate across different institutions and organizations. And I did during my master's study, I worked not only in 3 institutions, but 3 different countries: Italy, Portugal, Belgium. And they are even different. So I wonder sometimes, do we have a student who spent some time at University of Nairobi, at Strathmore, and all that? Even if, especially at this time in the age when virtual, we could do a lot. But we know that cross-collaboration is really a key to make resource utilization more efficient. Let's not also, always we say institutions, some organizations, but let's not also undermine the individual contributions you could make to make things better. And as a professor, as a lecturer, you could always do a lot to inform the students accordingly and make sure that they are aware of what's expected from industry side and all that. One quick example for this is in 2012, as I said, I was lecturing in a university back in Ethiopia, and I started a course called machine learning, and many people were, what is this machine learning? That is 2012, remember. And I said, okay, let's modify it into statistical processing, signal processing, and machine learning. That's just my individual effort because I did my master's thesis on that regard. 10 years later, that program is now even important and being copied across many universities in Ethiopia, let alone the students I taught 13 years ago. Now they are leading research labs in Europe and in the US. And that's not just a big thing, but I just share something I saw in Europe, and then I started in that local university. Now it becomes such a thing. So this is just to also motivate us, we could do a lot individually, especially with academia and with the students. Let me stop here if you have any question, and I thank you. Any question?
Yeah.
Shiva.
Thanks for that. I think the last part is what really, this issue of collaboration.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering...
So the first part is not that?
No, it was everything was very But I think this issue of cross-pollination, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how, especially what you see, how open the industrial doors are now. Because I think it's almost as though industry is going sometimes in the opposite direction from openness. We see a bit of that move.
Yeah.
And ideally what would happen is that you almost gear your research opportunities with within, for example, a Microsoft Office within Kenya, the local situation. So maybe that involves maybe saying, maybe there's not too many PhD students, maybe that means open it up more to master students, maybe change durations. But I'm just wondering whether how much of local students you welcome, and how we can maybe better prepare them to be able to flow through your section of the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's a good question, Shira. So local industries are so big, right? They have different departments and organizations, and it's very important to contact the right organization in a big industry. That's one thing. But I think it all starts with such a conversation, right? I was telling you earlier, I'm kicking off a food security project in Kenya sometime in the new year. So when I know what you are working on, there is a potential we could collaborate and we see how we could fit in each other. Specifically for AI for Good Lab, I don't know if I told you that earlier, we don't cost our partners anything when we do those projects. Our key denominator is impact, and we pick that organization because we are convinced that they are working on the right problem and they are generating the impact. For students, as I said, we often hire interns. That's something we engage. 2, we often have workshops, seminars. I'm sure some of you already, we met at Microsoft in different engagements. Always conversation is key, and let's start it personal relationship that becomes, institutionalized. Let's converse, let's engage, then we have the right motive and the right ingredient to push that and make it happen. But I think once we want to work with Kenya Higher Education Camps, there is a name, and that didn't go well because there was a lag in the conversation and all that. So again, keep pushing, keep knocking, let's engage at least at the personal level and be strategic about how to go about it. Don't target like the big organization in the first try. Let's sort of follow a bottom-up approach. That's more key. But on a personal level, happy always to be contacted. I often support curriculum revisions and all that in the local universities. We have workshops, seminars. I'm here today, so that engagement often is available. Thank you.
My concern is the way most of the research in AI is being funded. Because if we talk about Microsoft, which has that in the tool, it has the Western aspect, IBM or other companies. When they do that funding, you find promoting the African culture will always be limited, because you don't expect funding from the Western side to promote like the local languages at all. So, and I'm speaking this because we have the person from the that is Jero from the ministry. This is high time the government thinks also during the implementation of the AI strategy, there must be a lot of funding on the AI research, so that if you want to promote our local languages and other concepts, that is the African culture or whatever we want to promote, it must also come from our own money. Because if you get out the money, there must be vested interest on the AI strategy. So you may have a very good AI strategy, but when you get the money from out, no, there will be vested interest on the way you are implementing it. But there are some aspects which requires our own local funding, so that we do them the way we want.
That's a good comment. I don't know, what should I add? But something I am here and I use the opportunity to advise is there is a lot of opportunity, really. You'll be surprised, someone, I want to do this grant proposal. Can you connect me to someone working on the same topic in Africa? There is always the opportunity. And as long as, it should be like two-way. As long as we want funding or support resource to come in, we should be also prepared to calibrate our curriculum, our students, our research, our proposal, how it's also forward looking. And that way, always with that interaction, we could come up with something better. But I agree, and that's why I say, as long as AI is concerned for me, I focus on local problem. Local problem is local stakeholder, local policymakers, local government, and that should be, I hope, something we can take all from here today. Any other final question? Jay?
It's always a concern, and that's the reason why people are now. It will actually just go down to the aspect of where we talk about just sovereignty, talking about the sovereignty of everything. But I usually feel like at this particular moment, even if we get money from outside, as long as we're building for local solutions for now, it is okay. As usually now proceed, totally just looking at how usually now even fund it ourselves for the aspect of sustainability. But I'm really curious about the population mapping. Maybe ministry here is listening. I'm actually seated next to ministry.
Yeah.
And maybe
is that a good thing? Or?
Yeah, it is a good thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Just recently, there's a time I actually had a conversation. Someone actually talking about how Sweden, they don't even have to actually carry out. Is it Sweden or one of those Nordic countries that they don't have to carry out census anymore because they know in real time how many people are in that particular country. Yeah. And there's an aspect of even the aspect of digital trust, so they can even do like when they actually invite you for any meeting, they can literally even start with your name of your birth name, your birth date, and actually your name. So the digital trust actually reached that particular point. Yeah. But now for this particular case, when it comes to the population mapping bit of it, are we saying that you're looking forward to a stage where we cease doing national census, where like right now I have a feeling KNBS already has started preparing for the next census, which is going to be 2029. So I'm so sure they've actually started doing that, and it costed. I checked out the last time that the census were carried out in 2019. It costed 18.5 billion. Around 18.5 billion Kenya shillings. So are we looking at what you're doing being something that will reduce this significantly? How do we, and if so, how do we as an African continent take such, how do we actually like absorb this in our works?
Very difficult question.
Is it a DPG?
I think, in my opinion, this is like a product, right? And how you are going to use it, of course, how you share the data, access the data has its own responsible AI practice for sure. But how are you going to use it depends on your organization and your key problem. You said it doesn't mean that it should replace directly the census, right? The aim is there is no data about population mapping, not only in Kenya, but like in the global south. There is a gap. There is census that's been done. Kenya is probably in a better side, 10 years, 15 years, and a lot has changed in that time frame. Some countries don't even have population data for the last 20, 30 years. And then imagine flood happened, and you want to rescue people, you want to relocate people. Where do you even begin in the first place? So I guess that kind of data should be always, be useful across, different sectors. I could see easily the government census doesn't mean that you count each and every person, right? This kind of secondary data helps you to do well-stratified sampling, validation your sampling, and so on. For others, if you are building roads and other infrastructure, you want to build the roads so that people in that vicinity use. And if you are a startup, there is a lot you could also drive. So this is like population mapping. I believe most of us, we claim whatever we do is to benefit people, whether you are from the non-profit, from the government, from startup, from whatsoever. And this is a horizontal product. People could use it differently for their application domain.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Really interesting research. And I see you collaborate as well with universities, but from the West or Global North. So how are you looking to at least anchor some of this research within local universities so that you can also bolster the skills sets? So I know you do fellowships, mostly PhDs. A lot of them probably come from the global north.
Yeah.
And so since we're in the Dean's Roundtable, so how can we get more involved as, Kenyan institutions? You're doing projects related to, things that happen in Kenya. And again, the funding cycles probably don't allow us to tackle very interesting problems because we go with the wind of the funders, right? So right now, generative AI is the big story. So everything is generative AI.
Yeah.
And so you have to, follow that tide. But I think AI for good lab, because you have your own budgets, you can, find interesting problems to tackle. So to what extent are you looking to at least anchor some of this within existing institutions?
Great point. You're right. Most of the time, we work with organizations that own the problem. If it is healthcare, Ministry of Health, AMREF. If it's agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, Kenya Space Agency, and so on. And given we are working on project basis, we engage them first. And that's what I said actually in the recommendation, fill the gap. I have a project with the Ministry of Agriculture, and let's generate crop type mapping for this country for this year. And we focus on the problem and solving it. And that's what I mean by academia and the government should also come into together so that you are a part of that consortium. By the time we build it together. Students, academia, share experience. By the time we execute and we move out, you make that project sustainable. And that's exactly why I mentioned that fills a gap in my first recommendation, because I see it every time I talk to nonprofits, the government, people in academia are missing, and I hope that's like a starting point to to move into that in that goal, so that every time now I go for another project, I also see local universities. I am trying to do that. I was asking Shira and others, but that's not really my priority, and I hope it's like more of the local ecosystem, the government bringing Shira to that consortium than I try to introduce government and Kenyan university.
Okay. Thank you, Girmao. I think for the context of the people in the room and looking at where we are, based on your presentation, I would say, let's take an instance. Education in Kenya, especially now we've said higher education. Then I narrow it down to STEM, then I'll come down to IT and the deans you have here and the academia you have here. I think going out of here, I would say, okay, each of us sitting on something, especially looking at what our institutions and how we're looking at research, how we're looking at the SILA, I mean, not the curricula, yes, but the other underlying things within our institutions that we could actually bring out to see, can we then tap into this to actually bring them out? Because I mean, there's a lot of skill still required.
Yes.
And then you're looking at the problems you're addressing. There's also a skills component. If you're going to use AI tools, these challenges that you've identified, are any of the people here like involved, and how can we get involved in terms of looking at working with you to looking at AI for good, and then drill it down to our students, our faculty, because that way you're able to enrich a lot of this, you pass on the skills. I think the engagement of, let's say, private sector, or let's say an institution like Microsoft, working with academia, you're looking at academia, when looking at these challenges, where do you see us play a role? Because, I mean, all of these people have students. I have students in computing. We are looking at, I mean, Strathmore is big on impact to society. That's our mission. And you see the things you're looking at are challenges. I mean, there are grand challenges, hunger, food, all these things that have to be done.
Yeah.
But from our end, we would like to see when we go back to our different places, at least we know that when we see him out, we can ask him, okay, I have X faculty or this research group that can actually plug. Instead of there's a model of the PhD fellow. There is a very complex process. I don't know how they get selected, then how you get, at least give us information on that, so that each of the deans knows. If I want my faculty in there, and another model I found that worked, especially engaging with Microsoft, was that they were engaging a lot with students, and then the students would graduate and go. Some would end up with there, or some would end up in other places. But as a partner institution, every time they came back, it was like a new conversation. Oh, who did you deal with last time? They graduated. Now you're like, okay, let's have an engagement where you talk to the schools and have faculty involved, and you say, okay, from each of the universities, this person engages with your institution.
Yeah.
And then now we say we can follow up at our level the partnerships. Yeah. So those are things that we're saying. And when there's any research going, we can actually know and have an inkling and say, okay, if this is coming up, it's not my area. I let it go to someone else. Yeah. But at least you're aware of what is happening. Yeah. So how can we form part of this really as the dean? I'm sure they want to see, okay, where do we connect in this thing?
Yeah.
These are people who want to know the next thing tomorrow, how many faculty will do these things, and how much research funding will come, and all those things that will come.
I think alignment is key for me. When you say alignment, from what I see from the other side, things are changing fast. And when I think about individual level, for students, for staff, alignment is key. I think it's rightly mentioned at in the previous question. We need to follow up conversation. What's the priority? Different organizations have different priorities, different KPIs, and understanding that and how can we fit into that KPI is a good thing. But the main message I would love to share again is every time I talk to nonprofits, they always tell me, or governments for that matter, oh, we have this problem, we have this data, but we don't have the manpower, or someone who has the time to explore this. And I came to the students, they always ask, do you have an interesting problem to do my master's thesis PhD on? This is a disconnect there. So really, if we be strategic about what are the key problems the government's prioritizing, the ministry is facing, the Ministry of Health is facing, and what are the branch research areas across universities to connect, that is a very key thing. On hiring, it's individual based, as I said. I have to be honest, and sometimes when I have positions, I receive CVs. CV could be 17-page, and someone writing, I have Microsoft Word capability. This CV worked 10 years ago, but at this time and the age, that doesn't sit well with. So it's just being aware what's important in the industry, in the market, and trying to calibrate that is key. What we could do going forward, I know many of them are doing it already, we could always share, not when the positions are open. Before that, what does students need to know? How to present themselves so that they have this option and opportunities in that university. So we always could have this conversation, but again, alignment is key. 2, don't expect, you have also a big power. Kenya, the context better. If the problem is, crystal clear, you could also join us. Many in the West come with competing question and all that. One partner was David Baker from Washington, who got the Nobel Prize. He knows his problem. He asked for competing grant. So you could also have your own research center, your research hub, and you say, I have the people, I need competing, or I need an advisor, I need some mentor. That way you could also strategize how you interact the industries from your side. Or you go to Ministry of Urban and Planning and you identify the problem, together you come to us. So there is a way we could all play from each side, but alignment is key.
Just to add on that,
Just to add a little before
Yeah.
the question would be now, is this round table any value to the organization, looking at who's on the table in terms of impact and what you want to do in terms of looking at these services within Kenya. That's what.
I think that's very easy to answer for me. It's very important. Good to see familiar faces, Jerry, Maina, and Doris. But at the same time, you know me, now I know you. So when I say I'm kicking off this food security project in Kenya, we are engaging the Ministry of Agriculture, Kenya Space Agency, the President Office, FAO, many other partners. And we want it sustainable in the future. And we want local universities to be a part of it. I am aware. And now also you are aware, so you could ask the government, the ministries, we heard this project coming up, how can we be a player? From my side now I am aware, I will follow up and see who want, as we design the partners and collaborators, there is a thing or two I do, but the most key denominators are you guys, because now you know as well. Microsoft is bringing this big food security project, how can we fit in? Ask the ministry, ask the Kenya Space Agency, and that way we meet halfway.
Yeah, just to follow the same aspect on how well you are integrating your research within the locals, or the institutions which are here. Because we could also appreciate when you hear maybe a local university being involved. Yeah. I don't know, as I said earlier, it's because of lack of arts. We don't give anything. Yeah. We always want to receive. So I don't know, that's why sometimes we are there's a sidelining by even IBM and Microsoft and the rest organization.
Yeah.
So I think the government should also be aware. If the issue of funding, they should also be able to chip in to some of these projects so that our face is there. Because that's something we have found, whereby there are a lot of things happening locally here by these companies, but we don't feel it because we are nowhere. Like now that you are dean in a computer science,
yeah,
and some of these you are hearing them here,
yeah,
and you are the one who is guiding your student.
Yeah. So I have a counter question for you.
Yeah.
Get ready.
Yeah.
So which university are you from? Sorry.
From Kenyatta University.
From?
Kenyatta University.
Good.
Yeah.
And yeah, but this is, I think the message is for me is that the other side should be, I have been leading Microsoft AI for good 3 years. And I know a few people, but I haven't met a few people before. Why? Because some put the effort, the exploration, the contact, the interaction more eager than the others. So I guess it's a two-way, effort to make it happen. And things are changing quite a lot. And probably people not have time to explore each and every one stakeholders, because we need to act fast, and we should always, I was telling Jerry, knock, interact, ask, not only the industries, but also the government, so that we meet more often in such a space.
I'll give an example. When I requested Microsoft to train for AI, I felt the training was not to the level I wanted. And that is because I think they were more technical.
Uh-huh.
That is actually is always good, so that they understand maybe what we need as a university. So you find like, I found that training is more tailored, maybe it's a bit technical, maybe to your products and the rest.
Yeah.
But maybe whatever we want as a university is not well catered. And that's why it was mentioned, it's to know exactly how this interaction can be done, so that whatever goes on, there is also something coming out.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Are we? Then, is there any other question?
I think I wanted to also to conclude what you were saying.
Yes.
Because I saw Princeton University where you're doing something on food, water, and population.
Yes, in Namibia.
In Namibia?
In Namibia, yeah.
Oh, it's not in Kenya?
No, I said, I just select most of them Kenyan, but our presence covers the whole Africa. In fact,
what he has raised is pertinent. It's good you also engage our universities around, the local. Yeah. Then there is also the issue you mentioned on intersectional analysis for science and technology. And I wanted you to expand on that. Because when I check in the sectional, it deals with certain classification of people. Then I wanted also to know your center. Where is your center located? Because I know like IBM has a center at Catholic University, which serves us very well because our students usually visit that place. where is this center of yours? Oh, it is at Microsoft Research Center. You are just housed there, or you have a separate location?
So I was at IBM first. So just for your information, at Microsoft also many universities visit us actually. So it's just a matter of arranging. We are based in Wayaki Way on Den Hill Towers.
Okay. Thank you.
And,
I think it's the main center. That is the center we know.
Yeah, and all of us, there was different, we were in Oval, but now that big building is hosting Microsoft, and we are 500 plus headcount in Kenya alone.
Because like this Roundtable now we are together. These are all the deans who are controlling all these students.
Yes.
I would like also, so that we can see how we can be able to engage you in one way or the other. Because the projects you mentioned are very many.
Yeah.
I've seen there are many, and they touch actually on the core of our society. Because when you talk about malnutrition, you talk about food security, and those are the things even the government is grappling with.
That's why we are collaborating with the ministry and AMREF.
Yes.
Yeah.
So expand on this intersectional analysis.
Yeah.
Because the way I know it, it came from you in a different forum, in a different aspect.
Yeah.
So it's good to be.
I think just for the time, intersectionality means, of course, people, but also it could mean different factors. Geographic location. If you are building a solution, how does it affect, the coastal town, the arid and semi-arid versus, the central, which is very different ecological, zone. So when I say intersectionality, try to understand the different factors, the problem aligned with, and also the solution. How is it affecting across time? What you build for COVID in 2019 may not work now because things change. So it often comes as people, stratification, group, but when we say intersectionality, it means different layer. People, location, time, across different segments. And the more you try to understand the problem across the segments and also demonstrate how the solution is also impacting across these segments, is the better to win those grants.
Okay.
Jerry?
Just one more. Yeah, so thank you so much for your presentation. Mine will be on the data.
Yes.
I think most of us here are representing different universities. Yeah. Sometimes funding for getting that collection of data, because data is key. Data-centric was your presentation. So getting that data, we need a lot of investment. Maybe most of the universities may not afford. So my question will be, in your center, how would it look like sharing some of the data you have collected? For maybe you have answered your questions, maybe I could use the same data to answer other questions. How would that look like? If I approached you in your office and said, look, you've been in Mathioya, you got some data, how can you extend what you have already gotten from the field to be for research?
We would love to share, but the disclaimer is we don't own data. Okay. If I work in Muranga with Kenya Space Agency, what we generate belongs to Kenya Space Agency.
Okay.
If I work with the AMREF, whatever we build, the AI model, the data belongs to AMREF. That's how AI for Good Lab operate. We don't work to own something. We just share that with that provider. So if you are interested, you need to, of course, I will help you connect if you don't know them, but usually those organizations are the ones who have a say in the data we generate from those projects.
Yeah, because I think if we would have a mechanism or a framework of where universities can be able to get such kind of data where partners like you have already invested, so that I don't again look for funding to go to Mathioya to collect the same data. And I know there is that data existing somewhere. So I think such frameworks would really be helpful for universities.
And always, I would say, before collecting that data, explore if there are other data sources you could fetch it. And I'm sure Professor Sra and Lawrence also, you could share. I mean, you share the same question. How do you explore data sources before you go and collect by yourself?
Okay. Thank you very much. A round of applause for
Thanks, everyone.
Before we leave, we have a gift, and also Kevin, if you don't mind, you can actually just join us here. We have gifts for you. Though it's very hot nowadays, we chose a very hot gift, but it's still okay. So you can. So I'll just allow Esther to do this for us. I would like to invite. Thank you.
I'll start with one at a time.
Okay.
Yeah.